Good morning. So it is great to be here today, and it's great to actually follow Marlena's presentation because most of what I'm going to speak to you about is going to be reflecting some of those same markets that Marlena pointed out to you. Quick show of hands, how many of you have been to Cigi before? Okay, been on a combine to customer program or just a visit? Anybody on a combine to customer program? Okay, good. So one thing I would say is if you haven't attended a combine to customer program, talk to Dallas out here in the front. He can nominate you for next year's programs as well. But we'll talk about why those programs are important. The first slide, somebody told me, some communications experts told me that apparently our attention span is shorter than a goldfish or something these days. And they said the first thing you need to do is if you can put it in a tweet, that's what you want to get. So here's global consumption of, I would say, the rule of 1, 2, 3. 1 million tons of soybean a day, 2 million tons of wheat a day, and 3 million tons of corn a day is consumed globally each year. Okay? So each day. So basically what does that mean is we grow 28 million tons in Canada. If no other country was producing wheat, our wheat production would last 14 days. That's 2 weeks, if that's where we were looking at it. So we are 4% of the global production and 14% of the global export market. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about anything about price here today. We'll talk about why Canadian wheat is so well respected and demanded by customers from around the world. And it's not for the price value, it is about what it does when it comes to quality. Okay, so we'll discuss that as we go forward. But I just wanted to quickly give an update on what we do at Cigi. So this is just a quick overview of Cigi before I start on the quality piece. We are an independent, not-for-profit organization based in Winnipeg, put into place in 1972. So we have over 45 years of experience working with international and domestic customers on end product quality. Our mission is literally to increase market opportunities and end user success. So when I was part of creating this mission statement, the one thing to know here is the end user success piece. In this industry, for us to profit, every link in the value chain has to be profitable. And we have to look at the end product manufacturer first to see if they can profit or not, and then the profits can kind of go down all the way until seed breeding, right? So it goes down the chain. So our role is to make sure we work with customers around the world and make sure they understand how to use Canadian wheat to the best possible quality standards. And if they can use it and they can use it profitably, then we've opened up those markets. And we'll talk about how we approach certain markets to find and enhance some of those markets further down the list. But just keep that in mind. They have to be profitable. They are not looking at just buying Canadian wheat just because of the quality. The price plays a big impact on it. But the quality piece is where Canadian wheat lies. And Russian wheat, to me, most would say is competition. I would say at this point, they're a frenemy. Okay? We'll talk about that as we go forward. End-use functionality-wise, the most of the work we do at Cigi, about 80% of that is revolves around wheat. 15% is pulses, and the other 5% would be special crops. For those of you that have been to Cigi, know that most of the work we do there is very hands-on. So there's just a snapshot of some of our labs. We have experts in the building that are milling experts, baking experts, pasta manufacturers, and so on. So the uniqueness of Cigi, and I should say this beforehand, is no other country that exports wheat has an organization like Cigi. And I've been part of meetings with US Wheat Associates, with producers from Australia that come and tour our facility, and to be quite honest, they're envious of what we do. It's because we have a facility that works with customers and gives them an opportunity to be hands-on and figure out what that quality does for them. Okay? So this is something that is very unique to Canada and something that we should all be proud of. And I should say especially you should be proud of, because you're part of the funding agreement with Cigi as well. So you fund it to keep this running. Again, coming down to that, our funders, we are funded mostly by 3 groups, which is producers, exporters, and government. So the funding for wheat comes from the western provinces. So we have Sask Wheat, Alberta Wheat, and Manitoba wheat and barley. From the grain handlers, we have almost all the big grain handlers. The only one missing there is Louis Dreyfus, and we're still having conversations to bring them on board. And the government of Canada funds us as well based on the agro-marketing program. So all of this together gives us about $6 million to do market promotion for wheat per year. So the two focus areas at Cigi, one is pre-market support and the other one is in-market support. The pre-market support is what we talk about is what we do in Canada to support markets before we go out there. Has anybody here been to a PGDC meeting? Anybody know what a PGDC meeting is? Blair has, a few of you in the back. The PGDC meeting this year was held in Saskatchewan, which stands for Prairie Grain Development Committee. If you haven't been to one of these meetings, I would say you should go, okay? I've been there a few times and I'm confused out of my mind as what's going on. Lots of data, lots of information, but what that committee does is there's different groups. So within wheat, there's different groups for agronomy, for quality and so on and so forth. And they look at different varieties that are brought forward for registration or to be recommended to register. And if those things do not meet the end product quality piece, but they meet the agronomy piece, they don't make it. And same vice versa. So there is experts sitting around that table looking at what our future of our varieties look like. And that is something I think is key to why we are in a position right now for quality, is based on that recommending committees that have worked together to make sure we have good varieties to grow and the same varieties have the good quality that customers are demanding. So Cigi sits on two of those quality groups. On the wheat side, we have about 5 staff members, and on the pulse side, we have 1. So we basically become the voice of customers in Canada when this registration process starts. The in-market support. So this is what we are predominantly known for, is working directly with customers and showing them exactly how to use that crop. The goal right there, which it's exactly true, is informed customers know and choose Canadian grain. So this day and age, information is available everywhere. But not all that information is true. So until we have that direct conversation and relationships with our customers, it's hard to tell them, yes, Canadian wheat has the best quality. See you later. But we have to make sure that we can show them how they can use that crop to use it in their day-to-day processes, right? So what we do is we're not trying to reinvent the wheel when we talk about bread. What we're trying to do is we're trying to show them how to make their product with Canadian wheat, okay? They all started off somewhere using wheat from their own homelands, making that type of quality. But do we in Canada have different types of wheats that can fit different end products? And some of it we do, some of it we don't. And that's fine. And we'll talk about those qualities when we come down to CWRS and CPS. This is, I would say, a quick snapshot of all the countries we've worked with. Over the years, I think we've worked with close to 18,000 participants from about 115 different countries. So we are a very internationally based organization. If you ever come to Cigi in the summer, do give me a call, come for a visit. It is fascinating to see different groups that come in, different languages being spoken. So every time we have headsets, different, interactions going on. The one thing I've learned, and I was telling Dan this earlier, he had a joke for you, but I don't, is because I've learned that jokes don't translate well. So I've tried that multiple times, and I've learned that the hard way. So let's just leave it to that now. Before I go ahead, I just want to show you a quick video. And after this video, we'll get into the quality piece of things. the video kind of shows you the breadth of the work we do here at Cigi. It's hard to put all of those things in presentation format because you need to see some of that equipment to understand the work we do. We are not a lab scale facility. We are mostly a commercial scale. So if you come to Winnipeg and you're out there, you'll see that there's a flour mill on the 11th floor. There's a bakery. There's a pasta plant. We have an analytical lab. All those things are key to knowing the fact that customers appreciate coming to Canada and learning from the experts on how to best use Canadian crop. Okay, so let's move ahead. Anybody heard about the new crop missions? Anybody heard about what happens during new crop missions? No? Okay, so on a yearly basis, the team, we call it Team Canada. So it's got Cereals Canada, we have Canadian International Grains Institute, we have the Grain Commission, we have an exporter and a producer traveling with us. So we recognize that there is a need around the world after the new crop harvest is done is to inform customers on the quality of that crop that just came off. And that analysis is done at Cigi and at the CGC, at the Canadian Grain Commission. You know those envelopes that you get for the harvest assessment piece? If you don't already send that in, I would say please do, because that is where we get the samples from the prairie provinces. We put those samples together, create composites, and then we learn about how the quality has changed from previous years, and we inform customers about what that quality looks like for previous years. So what we do during this time is we inform customers about the quality of the crop for the 2018 year. We talk about if there's any evolutions in the industry that has happened. And most of all, it is to answer their questions. I was in two different missions, and we'll talk about that further down. But the difference is, in some countries, competition is so fierce that there will be 120 people in that crowd, but we won't get one question. However, as soon as we break for lunch, people are swarming around you to ask you certain questions, because they have issues within their plants sometimes that they do not want other companies to know or their competitions to know. So what happens is those meetings that we have after the seminar is done are very important, because that's the time you get to have this one-on-one conversation, and it's confidential discussions to help customers improve on their processes that they already have in place. And one of the biggest things I would say is this piece right here, is to maintain and build relationships. When we do new crop missions, we are not the only country that does this. US Wheat Associates is there, speaking on behalf of their quality of their crop. France Cereals is there, and so does other countries as well. We work, at least I do, with US Wheat Associates directly to make sure that our dates don't coincide with each other. Because if they do, then you're splitting the group and you're getting less people in the crowd. So we try and work together to make sure that our dates align. We understand that we are competition, but we also do not want to divide the crowd when we are out there. So we work together to do that. Who attends these new crop missions? We have millers, bakers, pasta manufacturers, owners, government officials. Anybody who's interested in wheat is at these meetings. So we did 4 missions this year. One was Asia, the other one was Latin America, Europe, and Gulf countries. Here's a quick snapshot of the countries we went to. So in October is when we do all the analysis. So that 1 month at Cigi, nobody's doing any market outlook piece at that point. We are just looking at what the quality looks like of Canadian crop. Then we take off in November. So the first mission went to Asia. We had Japan, China, Indonesia, Singapore. That was the first mission. The other one which went down started off in Mississauga. Because again, we forget that our biggest customers are our domestic lines. So we need to talk to our domestic millers about what the quality looks like. So we stop in Mississauga, we show them exactly what the quality is, and then we head down to Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, Chile, and Peru. Both the groups came back. The next mission went to the Philippines, Dubai, Nigeria, and Ghana. We call that the garden tour because you go around the world, and it's not really fun because you're in and out of bags and airports. And the other one is the Durham mission. So that was Morocco, Algeria, and Italy. And we'll discuss a bit about what was discussed in those countries. But how do we choose which countries we visit? It's not just picking out of a basket. We look at the countries that predominantly buy Canadian wheat, and they buy Canadian wheat for the quality aspect and have been loyal to Canadian wheat because of that. So this chart right here, for next year, I'm going to use the one which Marlena used, which was to date. This is for the 2017-2018 crop year. So this shows that Indonesia was one of our biggest buyers, then United States, Japan, Colombia, Bangladesh, Peru. So if you see these countries here, these are the countries that you can tell are the ones we did new crop missions with. So it's because these are the ones that buy for the quality purposes. And that's our top 10 countries that usually buy from Canada. The piece about Indonesia, Indonesia has established itself as one of the biggest milling countries in the world. The US Bank or the World Bank has also said that the economy in Indonesia is going to grow so fast that by 2030, 80% of their population is going to be in the middle class. And that is something to watch for. Indonesia has used its geographical location to make sure they can bring wheat from all different countries and then blend it to make different flours and then re-export to the countries around them. Okay? Japan, Colombia, in South America, Colombia is probably one of our biggest markets, including Peru. Peru and Colombia predominantly get most of our CWRS and CPS crop that goes into South America. Japan, by far, our only premium spring wheat market. They do not, like, even though they know that Russian wheat is cheaper and they can substitute some of it, they would choose to pay a premium for that quality that they get from number 1 CWRS and number 2 CWRS. Japan is very critical on what happens to our market because they are the ones that buy the premium quality wheat from Canada. I want to talk to you a little bit about Nigeria and Bangladesh as we go forward, but these are countries that we wouldn't really think about that would buy Canadian wheat, but they do, and we'll talk about that as we go forward. Here's a list for the durum piece. This was the previous year, so again, Algeria was the biggest buyer, then Morocco, then United States, then Italy. I would say, yes, Algeria is back in the market, and I was in Algeria this year during the new crop missions. They literally doubled their crop last year by production. So of course, in Algeria, most of the buying is done by the government agency called OAIC. They want to use their local crop. So when they do the buying and they want their customers or their manufacturers within the country, they dominate what wheat they would get. So they've been saying, we need to use the local crop first before we go out and buy other quality wheats. However, during the meeting, we had customers in the group that were upset based on not having the opportunity to buy Canadian wheat. Because they realized that Algeria had a good durum crop, yes, but it didn't have the quality to make sure that they could feed their production. And quality plays a big factor in the CWRS and CWAD piece, and we'll talk about that further down. Here's a good chart. I like this map because it kind of gives you a snapshot of all the different, this is about 20 to 25 big exports out of Canada. And each of the countries we reach, and the thicker the bar, the more the exports going into those countries. Okay, so now let's talk about Canadian wheat classes. There is about 10 different Canadian wheat classes that we are all aware of. But we are going to just focus today on CWRS, Quad, and CPSR. So if I asked you, what does quality mean to you when it comes to wheat, what would you say? Anybody want to take a shot at it? Protein, yeah? Falling number. And that's good because basically, when it comes to quality, the way I define it is there's two pieces to the puzzle, and that's where you get wheat quality. The two pieces are the class of wheat that you choose to grow, and that starts with you. You would choose which class of wheat you want to grow, and you would choose a variety that works best in your area to grow that class. And then each of those classes, because of the registration system, we have a certain quality parameter within those classes that work, right? So it fluctuates a bit, but it stays within those parameters. And that's key because Canada says we are a quality supplier, but a consistent quality supplier. You do not want to be up and down out of it. So that is a key piece on the quality side. On the other side is something that we cannot control, is the environment. Rain, snow, frost, stuff happens. That based on that crop year, you would have different degrading factors. And those degrading factors are set up by the Canadian Grain Commission. And the Canadian Grain Commission then sets those standards for the year, and your grain is graded based on that, and that's what you get paid for. But those grading factors are not just arbitrary. Those grading factors will have an impact on quality when it comes to end products as well. And that is key, and that's why those grading factors matter, and that's when you get lower graded values, you lose money, but at the same time, they know that exporters are looking for it because every market is looking for a different quality parameter out there. So that's what defines wheat quality. I like to put up this picture all the time because I'm familiar with this, but I want to know if anybody in this room knows why we mill wheat and what is milling wheat? Like what does it mean to mill wheat? Anybody know? So let me clarify this again. When we think about markets around the world, we need to look at who's buying wheat. And guess what? Bakers are not buying the wheat. Noodle manufacturers are not buying the wheat. Who's buying them? Countries are not. It's the millers in those countries that are buying the wheat. So the millers are the ones who know what type of wheat they want and how they want to blend it to make a certain different type of product. So this wheat kernel, I always put this on here just because it kind of gives you a snapshot of what happens when wheat goes into those mills. There's different types of mills out there. Biggest, I would say about 60% or 70% of the mills out there are called roller mills. And the roller mills are two rolls which have segregated rolls in them, and one moves slower, the other one moves faster. And I'm going to step away from the mic and hope you can hear me. What happens here is it just rips the bran apart. Okay? So the bran, which is on the outside, it rips it apart. So that takes the bran off, gets the germ off, and this is where your flour comes from. That's the endosperm. Okay? So basic milling process, when you think about roller flour mills, is to get the bran off, get the germ off, and that's where you get your white flour from. Okay? Different markets will have different definitions now. Now if you want whole wheat bread, anybody tried whole wheat bread before? Yeah? Do you know how that works? It's the exact same process. What they do is they take the bran off, take the germ off, and they make the flour, and then they give the baker a bag of bran. Now the baker can choose how much bran they want to include in that bread process. So tomorrow, if you're buying 60% whole wheat, 80% whole wheat, 100% whole wheat, that's basically the bran added back to that flour. The reason bran is separate, bran has oil in it, right? It's got a little bit of oil in it. If you keep that in the flour, your flour is going to go rancid. So the best way to do that was take the bran off. Now if you think about whole wheat bread, the whole thing is crushed down. So there's germ in it as well. So if there's a germ in it, it doesn't let the gluten bind itself, and then it creates bigger pockets. So if you go out tomorrow and buy whole wheat bread and buy whole grain bread, you'll see the difference. Whole wheat bread looks like a normal loaf of bread, but it has specks in it, right? So because it's got bran. Whole grain bread is more denser and it's got bigger holes in them. That's because the germ is also in. So millers are the ones that are the key piece in this whole puzzle. Millers understand what type of wheat they want and which countries will use it in a different sense. Now this milling process, let me say, gets very, very technical, and I'm not even qualified to speak about it, but I'm going to give you a quick snapshot. In Japan, they buy this wheat. Their traditional product is shokopan bread and udon noodles. Okay? Has anybody had udon noodles before? Yeah? Do you know how thick and white they are? That's because when they extract the flour from this wheat, they do not want to be anywhere close to the bran. So in our industry, we call that extraction. So the extraction process, they will be here in the 60% extraction. They only get 60% of the central flour for that use because they do not want bran anywhere close to that. Okay? The maximum you can actually extract would be close to 72%. But they would rather let go of that 12% of extraction, which is money, to make sure that the quality piece of 60% extraction fits for them. Okay? So that's just Japan. There's other countries which will choose to move the central piece of the flour into one bin and the external flour into another bin to make sure that the traditional product has no bran in it, but the other ones will have a little bit of specks in them. That's all technique, and it's all technical processes. They can do that. And we at Cigi can show them exactly how to do that with Canadian grain. We have the tricky part about Canadian wheat is our brand is red. Most of our wheats are red. So when you use red wheats to use a whole grain product, those specs stand out. That's why Australia has a better market for noodles, because they can get more extraction and their brand is more white. So even if they get more extraction, the brand doesn't show up in those products. So Australian wheat, generally, if you think about Australian wheat, it dominates the noodle market out there. We would be the bread market around the world. Okay. Now let's come down to why bread and why this makes it a key piece in the puzzle for Canadian wheat. Anybody heard about gluten here? Any gluten intolerant folks? My apologies and my sympathies as well. Gluten is basically the protein in the wheat. Okay? So when somebody says, I got 13% protein in my wheat, what does that mean? That means there's enough gluten properties in that wheat to make a certain type of product. But gluten has two properties. One is gliadin and the other one is glutenin. And I won't get into the scientific piece of this. Just think about chewing gum. Okay? One which is extensible, so it extends and it's elastic, so it goes out. The other one is elastic, so it extends but it pulls it back together. Okay? I grew up in India. Anybody has been to an Indian restaurant to eat chapatis and naans and all those bread products? They're mostly flatbreads. Why is that? Is the protein in that wheat, in that Middle Eastern region, in the Indian subcontinent, doesn't have this piece here. It does, but it doesn't have enough of it. Mostly has this. So think about, anybody make pierogies at home? Once in a while? Yes? No? So if you roll the pierogi and it keeps coming back at you, it's no good. So Canadian wheat might be hard to make what do you call it, pierogies. But if you're using a wheat that is extensible, you can make those nice rotis, nice flour, like flatbreads. But if you want to make a nice loaf bread, you want it to expand and you want it to hold it back as well. That is what makes Canadian gluten property, or we call protein quality, key. Because Canadian wheat is mellow, which basically means extensible, and it's got elasticity. So it has got the properties to make good bread volume. Okay? So when somebody says, oh, I need more protein, protein necessarily doesn't mean it's a good thing. Okay? There's different aspects of protein that will help you. So protein quality is what we're talking about. Here's 3 loaves of bread that were baked with the same amount of protein, same ash content, same extraction, and you can see there's differences in quality when you bake them. And that's the whole point. The CWRS wheat that we have in Canada is got that quality that you can blend with other wheats from other origins to make that product. We just had a group of Cigi staff go to Russia and Ukraine. I asked them what would their gluten property look like. And I'm not a technical person, so I said, tell me what it looks like in layman's terms, right? They said, it is, if you think about chewing gum, it is that old gum that you've been chewing for a while. So you bring it out and it rips, it tears. So basically what it does is, if I go back to the thing, it's got more of a property like this. Not everybody wants that, because if you're trying to make a loaf bread and it's just not rising up, you don't want that either. You want that little bit of extensibility and elasticity. So most countries that are buying Russian wheat or Ukrainian wheat are blending Canadian to bring that quality up to make those products. And we'll talk about that further when we come to Nigeria and Ghana. Just to kind of give you a quick highlight about last year, about 61.2% of Canadian wheat that was graded about number 1 CWRS. Average protein was 13.8%. The 3 degrading factors last year predominantly were frost, mildew, and hard vitreous kernels. This kind of gives you I'm not a CGC expert or a grading expert, but we just try to put pictures on to show you what these degrading factors look like. This is hard vitreous kernel. You see these white kernels? That's not what CWRS should look like, right? So that is where these are softer kernels. That is not good. And softer, do you know why hard vitreous kernels matters for millers? So if it is too soft and it goes into a roller mill, right, it just crushes it. It doesn't let you like rip the bran apart. So you need that hardness in the wheat to make sure that the bran comes off. And when you're doing that, there's starch damage. And that starch damage is where the water is absorbed. And that is another key about Canadian wheat, is water absorption is key. Why? Because bakers can sell bread for the price of additional water. So they can add more water, the better it is. So the harder the wheat, sometimes it's good because that starch damage happens and the water starts absorbing into the flour. Frost and heat stress, you probably are aware of these things when you see them. CWRS, predominantly a king of wheat in Canada, I would say. It is the best quality bread wheat in the world, in my opinion. Some would say it matters. But when it comes to the three biggest exporters in the world, let's say 5 biggest exporters in the world, there's only 3 that compete for protein and quality. That's US, Canada, and Australia. Okay? So when you think about US wheat, USNS, the DNS factors, and CWRS compete head on. Okay? If you want good quality bread and you want to blend your wheat, this is the wheat you're looking for. So CWRS is used mostly as an improver wheat all over the world. And that is why customers will buy this. It's got good extraction, good flour color, nice and white, and it can be used in multiple different products for, for pasta, you can use it for noodles, but not really used on a big scale in many countries for other than bread. So I would say 85% of the buyers that buy Canadian wheat or CWRS use it for bread products. CPSR. So this is CPSR. Average protein last year was 12.8%. 33.9% was graded number 1. CPSR is a good quality wheat. It is got potential, and most of it goes into South America. Because South Americans like to make small buns, and those buns do not need the same protein content you need from CWRS. So CPSR fits into those markets really well. The tricky part about CPSR is in the marketplace, it competes with HRW and Russian wheats. And honestly, if we start going down that route of about being in that medium protein wheat classes, we are going to get slaughtered. We are not that market. We are a premium wheat quality market. We need to have higher protein, high quality wheat. In the medium protein wheats, it's very difficult to compete when the biggest crop in the US is HRW and the wheat coming out of Russia and Ukraine is that same quality. So something that we cannot compete with. Luckily, South America is just so close to us. They are used to the quality, and most of it gets used up in South America. Here's a chart of different wheat classes from US, Canada, and Australia, and different products that it can be used into. So you can see CWRS can be used for high volume breads, can be used for alkaline noodles, and medium volume breads. So it is a very flexible type of wheat quality that you can use. CWAD, quad. 68.5% of the quad was number 1. Average protein was 14.2% this year. You know what? Can't say much about the quality because it has been the best quality we've grown ever. Unfortunately, our markets are not open to Canadian wheat right now. Italy, the issue still exists. We were there having those meetings. Their own industry is divided out there. It's not every company that says we do not want Canadian wheat. There's some that want to follow the consumer pressure, some don't. So this will hopefully figure itself out. There is some wheat going into Italy, durum going into Italy. That's a good thing for us. I should just skip this. Italy is a good market, but the 2 other markets that we talk about are, I would say, the key durum markets that we cannot lose is Algeria, Morocco, and to a lower extent Tunisia at that point. Most of this stuff goes into making couscous. That's what couscous looks like. You can actually buy this in stores here. The biggest quality parameter for couscous is protein and color. Quad has the best color any durum wheat out there. And if you go to Morocco, Morocco is our premium durum buyer. Algeria buys 2s and 3s a quad. Morocco buys mostly predominantly number 1. And if you ask them, what's the quality you look for when you're buying durum wheat? They'll say 3 things: color, color, and color. Okay? This yellowness comes from the wheat itself, right? So this yellowness is what most of the markets want, and all our varieties that are grown in Canada have that color that no other country can beat. Okay? So that's one thing to have. I put a picture here, and I don't know if you can see the difference. This is CPSR. In Peru and Colombia, they are making pasta with CPSR. The reason is they don't have the same quality requirements for color. Neither do they have the same requirements like the Italians say, I want it al dente. Al dente basically means one bite, it should break. That's what pasta is generally consumed as. But they don't have that same requirements, so they make it with CPSR. But you can see the color difference. Can you see it on that sheet, like a bit? Yeah. So that yellowness is basically where quad is predominantly grown for. What did we learn from this new crop mission? Customers want quality, they want it consistently, they wanted performance, and timely delivery. When we have an exporter in the group traveling with us, you know what the questions revolve around by customers is, can you get it to us on time? What does your railway look like? Can you make sure that when you promise me a certain date, can you get it to me on that date? So these when we talk about countries that import Canadian wheat, they don't have tons of storage. They want to make sure that they make they buy the stuff at the right time, so when they are starting to make some space in their silos, they can then refill it. Because if they bring it in every month, they have no place to store, and that becomes a concern for them. What did we learn? Customers are eager to explore other classes, yes, but again, we are the high quality, high protein supplier, and that's where we need to be. US is an aggressive competitor, always has been. Russia becoming more so, but that's on the quantity side. I would say their quality is not there yet. However, there's some varieties grown in Kazakhstan which have some good quality. So something that we can't take for granted. We have to make sure that we are on the top end of quality when we are talking about research. So something to keep an eye out. Again, want to hear from producers. I would say whenever we do new crop missions, we had 2 from Saskatchewan this year, Laura Ryder and Scott Hepworth, traveled with us on new crop missions. At some point during the meeting, customers would say, I don't want to hear from any of you. I want to know what the producer's perspective is. And that's good, because they want to know that the industry is working together to achieve the goals that we have. All right, so I talked a lot already. How much time do I have, Dan? 5 minutes? Okay, quickly want to mention Nigeria and Bangladesh. The 2 countries that we would never think that will buy Canadian wheat are buying Canadian wheat. About 5 to 10 years ago, we started doing some work with these countries. And the way we start looking at these markets is you go in, you look at how they are using the crop and why they're using it for. In these countries, what has displaced, at least in the African countries, Canadian wheat has gone up. So this is some of the bakeries in Nigeria. This is what they look like. They're not very sophisticated, but they need the quality. Because they need the dough in the morning. They let it rest in that heat for about 8 hours, and then they bake in the evening when the customers are just leaving their home, leaving their work. So it stays out for a while. So if it didn't have that extensibility to hold it together, or elasticity to hold it together, the dough will just flood off, right? And then Bangladesh. Just want to quickly show the numbers. Bangladesh and Nigeria, after the work we've done with them about figuring out which bread products Canadian wheat can fit into, you can see the growth in the last few years. Bangladesh is now literally a 1 million ton market, and Nigeria has potential. And if you look at the data that goes into Nigeria, the wheat that has been displaced is Russian wheat has displaced HRW from the US. Canadian is growing, because if they're buying Russian wheat, they need to blend with Canadian wheat, and this is proof. Ukraine, you can see one of the countries like Bangladesh, if they're buying Ukrainian wheat, they're buying Canadian wheat as well, just to blend, to make sure that they can get that quality piece. Same with this, Nigeria buys a lot from, where's Nigeria? Right here. Buys a lot of Canadian compared to Ukrainian. However, they buy more Russian, right? They buy more Russian compared to Canadian. So again, in most of the countries, Canadian wheat is known for quality, and it is known as a blending wheat. That's about it. I think I don't have anything else to add. But if you don't, if you have the time, I would say next winter, please put in your names for the Combine to Customer program, and hope you get some value from it as well.